and welcome to this week's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Jin.
And I'm Shane Carvalho.
So today we have Frank Contreras, General Contractor for 34 years. So it's safe to say he knows his stuff. Amazing knowledge and experience when it comes to renovations, modeling. Plus, I think, Shane, we need to have a new term. And I'm thinking like we should call it FOSS, Friends of Shane. Which is what Frank is. So, and it naturally makes him an amazing guest for our podcast. Frank is also kind of Shane's go-to partner for flips in the Santa Cruz area. He's dabbled in rental properties and now is investing out of state. So, with that, Frank, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be here. Great to see you again, Michael. We almost met over on Felt Street a few years ago, but you were so quick I didn't get to say hello.
I know. We'll have to find time to actually sit down and get to know each other a little bit better. And Frank, let's start with a fun one. You and Shane have known each other for a while. How long do you guys go back? And any fun stories you want to share about my podcast partner here?
Well, yeah, it has been a while. Shane, when I met Shane, he was in the mortgage industry. It must have been 2006 or 7. And when we first started trying to invest in rental properties, Shane helped us with the loans on 2 properties up here in Sacramento. And I kind of dove in without any knowledge, and we ended up losing those properties along with
Oh, geez. Thanks, Frank. I wasn't the realtor.
No, but actually, Shane, I was thinking the other day, when I first started that, I was really gung-ho, and I was just looking and looking and looking. I was ready to buy more, and you actually told me to put on the brakes and stop. So otherwise, I probably would have lost more. But and I was trying to remember actually how we started working together. I don't recall. I know we ran across each other at Home Depot after we had gotten those properties in Sacramento, and you needed some little thing done somewhere, and that's where it all began.
Well, so the realtor brought you to me, and I forget who it was. And actually, it was even further back. It was like 2000. Let's see. I came back 2000. So I opened that office. That office where you met me opened in 2003, 4, right in there. So I met you probably 2004. So it's been 20 years, actually, believe it or not. But it's funny that you say Home Depot because the odds of running into you there are high because you are there. How many days a week, Frank?
Yeah, they open at 6, so I'm usually there a couple minutes before 6.
Confessions of an addict. There's a certain block in the morning when it's just perfect to be at Home Depot.
Insider secrets. Best time to go to Home Depot. Well, I gotta say, like, if you're a general contractor and you're not spending every day at Home Depot, that's that's gonna be a problem, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite place, no matter what. I remember when I first got introduced to Home Depot, we lived in Fremont. That was about 2000, and I was just amazed that there was a store like that.
You know the store better than the employees.
If I ever get a regular job, I think it might be there. But things
right. You better be a shareholder by now.
Yeah.
I was gonna say at this point, not even a regular. You should just be running Home Depot. How's that?
I was just gonna say, back in the day when Home Depot just started out, they used to have what they called homers, and they were like retired electricians, plumbers, and contractors that actually worked in the aisles and knew what they were talking about. And today, there's nothing
it's too bad. It's gone downhill fast.
All of the kids just direct you to the app on your phone to go find stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Frank, the one thing you shared, I always learn something new about Shane. I think when we bring on one of our guests, and the thing I think I learned that's new today is Shane being the voice of reason, telling you to slow down and stop. Normally, I feel like in our partnership, he's the one that's like go 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 go, and I'm like, yeah, let's evaluate a little bit. But
yeah, well, he's been looking out for us for a while.
I appreciate hearing that, Frank. No, definitely that's one thing that holds true. I've always looked out for people's best interest. I'm more challenged about my own best interest, I think.
Yeah, I think the tables are better now. We got to watch out for him.
Yeah, no, we definitely made some changes going forward. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but anyway, go ahead, Michael.
Well, so Frank, you've been in the business for 34 years, so that indicates a few things to me, and that's longevity. That's also a track record of success, and that you've been able to kind of sustain your business for so long. So, What are some of the things you say that you've done that's allowed you to, one, build your business and then be able to maintain such a long career in general contracting?
I think probably the biggest thing to date is that I've kept it really small. Shane gets on me sometimes for that I should grow and hire more people, but that's always been a challenge for me because especially today, that I mean, nobody wants to work. They just want money to come to them magically. And I've never found anyone that would take care of my business the way that I do, take care of my clients and um, just be respectful, be clean, be courteous and that kind of thing. And it's kind of that's kind of gone out the window over the years. So honestly, it's just myself and my cousin's been with me for like 25 years. My son helps us when we need help. I've had other good friends who are other contractors that lend a hand when we have larger projects, but most of our stuff is pretty small. A lot of kitchen and bath remodels that we can handle ourselves. And I think over the years we've had a lot of repeat customers. Um, once they once they get to know how we work and the quality of work that we want to put out, then they come back. I'm even starting to work for some of the children of my original clients, and that's been a real honor.
That's Frank. I was just gonna mention something about that. We're aging, man. Like, I I've actually been experiencing the same thing. When you said that right now, I'm laughing because I just had a client last week call me. He's like, "Yeah, she's working at Stanford. She's ready to buy a house." I'm like, "Dude, she was like in the stroller like a minute ago. Like, she's in the medical field buying a house in the Bay Area. Holy moly!" But hey, that makes you feel good though, right? I mean, 'cause that means you care and your quality of service. Your clients come back. Why do you think they come back? I mean, why do you think you've built such a good relationship with them? What would you say is key?
Well, I think especially after we work for them, sometimes when a new customer asks for an estimate or something, sometimes they think maybe our prices are a little bit high, and that's something that we've always competed against in the past. Where I don't know, just whatever you're bidding, an interior paint job, for example, and you know things cost what they cost, and I know the level of expertise I'm going to bring to their home. But then they think, well, I'll just go grab a guy from Home Depot or something because he'll do it for half, And I mean, most of the time they learn their lesson, but once in a great while, that customer will be happy with that person slopping paint on their walls, and then you still look bad. So you can't really think about that too much. I think where it comes into play more often is after we've done something for a client and they see, I mean, we've chased dogs down the street that got out. We made sure the dog had water, and the homeowners give us their keys, and they've been locked out, so we can drive over there and let them in their own house. Just different things like that that we've done to go beyond what I guess a typical contractor would do. I've had some clients call me that they weren't going to get home in time, and their dogs had to be let out. So we'll drive over there and let the dogs out, and just weird little things like that. And I would say now the majority of our clients have become friends over the years, and we really don't want to let them down after that, especially.
That's a common theme, huh, Shane? Like full service, right? Just you take care of your clients, they become friends, they become family, and then then you're talking about, like, to both Frank's example and yours, like generations of clients that you start working with.
Yeah, I actually just realized for the first time, Frank, that that's very similar to how my business runs. Like, I mean, I know the kind of service and that people like you and stuff, but it's interesting because I didn't even think about that. You've been applying the same principles in your business.
Yeah, and it's
That's
taken us a
awesome.
long way. I mean, we really haven't. You mentioned the investing again in rental properties and stuff for a long time. Well, my clients would always tell me, as soon as you're finished with my house, you need to raise your prices. So we've we've had to, bump up our prices a little bit over the years. And someone told me, which is actually a fact, that it's expensive to live here where we live, and that cost, it gets spread around from, maintaining your home and just living here in the area that we're living in. I don't think I've ever seen a decline in purchase prices or anything like that in this area. So it seems like it's got its own little um, mini or micro market, compared to some of the surrounding areas that do fluctuate more. But yeah, I think, and it's a super huge compliment for them to actually want us to work with on their kids' homes, so that was kind of cool. besides the fact that feeling older.
Well, so Frank, it's interesting. So you talk about like with existing clients that you've built a relationship with. It's kind of funny that you do a job for them and tell you, oh, after you're done, raise a price. But then you also mentioned with new clients, sometimes they don't they haven't worked with you before, obviously, and so they don't really totally understand the quality, the amount of effort, the cost that goes into doing a job that you and your team do. And it's funny, I always have this opinion, especially of clients here in the Bay Area. Maybe it's because I think about my parents, or I think about other, Asian clients in the area. And I'm always of the opinion that, like, this is my hypothesis. The first bid that they get, no matter what it is, they're always going to think that it's expensive. So I'm just kind of curious because, from a general contracting perspective, like when a new client comes to you and it says, "Hey, I have a job for you," how do you go about evaluating it? How do you go about scoping it out? Like, how do you put together a bid? Like, what do you look for?
Most of the time, well, obviously we have a list of things that we do. Like, for example, I don't play with roofs or anything like that. So that if that's the question, then we can't help them, but we do have referrals for good roofing contractors. But most of my
Yeah,
stuff, we've done it so much that we did have to make a slight adjustment after the pandemic, with prices of materials going up. And I didn't realize that until, one day I was just in Home Depot
sure.
picking up
Yep.
some lumber for a job, and I checked out and it was like 3 times the price. I'm like, when did that happen? But other than that, I usually just figure out how
Yeah.
much time it will cost us. I don't like to work uh, time and materials because the clients don't know how fast or how slow we are, and that it just seems to get people in trouble all the time doing it that way. So I'll just give them, a bid. And once in a great while that has raised some eyebrows because, take flooring, for example. I charge so much per square foot for flooring, and we've done it so often that we do it, I guess, too fast. And they're saying, well, how come I'm paying you $400 for one day of installation? And then I've just had to remind them that we're doing it by the square foot. Then they can check their prices against,
Yeah.
they can check with Home Depot and see what they're charging and different things like that. But most of the stuff we do now, we've done. I mean, we can do it in our sleep, so I can just kind of and I'll usually let them know ahead of time. I'll give them like a ballpark price, and if they want an exact itemized estimate, then we'll do that. But I have found in the past that sometimes they'll just use that as a shopping list, and it takes us quite a bit of time to to figure out uh, a reasonable estimate for their project. And a lot of people don't realize that. That's always been one of the things I've struggled with. And Shane knows when I have to do estimates for a large project, it takes me a while. I just want to get there, do the job, do a good job and
Yeah.
keep going. But figuring out all the costs. And now I think people are surprised if they do want an itemized estimate, actually how much everything costs or how much goes into a project, right? From nails, glue, caulk, uh, plastic, whatever it might be. And paint's gone up quite a bit over the years. And, sometimes they'll want like a Benjamin Moore product and they're like $70 a gallon. They can't even believe it. But then, you can get the same color at Home Depot for about 40. And I really like that product as well. So just all of those things come into play. And I guess we could have to try to keep educating our clients as we move along that, and maybe it's been 10 or 15 years since they did a project too. So back then it was a quarter of the cost.
That's a great point. It's a matter of kind of perspective and where like clients are grounded in terms of their past experiences, right? And I mean, I when you say that, my head goes to like, I have friends, and I'm thinking about this from an age perspective, but it's kind of the similar approach. Is like I have friends that I've known since I was in high school, and when I knew them in high school, they were like 25 years old, right? And so now today, when I look at them, I perpetually think they're 25 years old, and even though obviously they're not, right? And it's just a matter of like where your frame of reference was grounded. And so I think you actually bring up a great point there. And the other thing is interesting is because it is like we don't like a lot of people that want to remodel, they haven't done this job before, they're not familiar with kind of where the current market and industry is, even though like they probably work in tech and they probably talk about cost of living over there too, and from that perspective they probably know how high it is, but then maybe they don't necessarily always make that connection from what they're focused on to this job that they're
And
trying
is
to do.
I guess one aspect that's kind of unfortunate is like the client that I'm working with now. We're doing a couple bathrooms in their home, and once we go through the process with them, because I like to shop, I'll go with them to Home Depot or to pick out slabs of granite or whatever they're picking, and just
Yeah.
once we go through the process, that's probably going to be the last bathroom that they'll ever going to do, right? So that they've learned a lot, and it would help them if they had another bathroom to do, but
Yep. True.
they don't. But with these folks, they had two in their home, and they're having us do both, and they learned a lot on the first one. So on the second bathroom, they were able to make um, better, quicker choices. The first bathroom took a long time because we kind of educated them on what's available now and how things are done now, newer products and things like that. So on the second bathroom, they were ready to go. So, but yeah, most people don't have that luxury, or unless they're flipping houses or something like that.
Right, exactly. And just a quick question before I hand it back to Shane is, for our listeners out there who don't know, like, what do you mean by when you say time and material?
Yeah, basically that's just um, when you take on a project, say it's I don't know, maybe building a deck, and we will either we can purchase the decking materials, or sometimes the customer will pick them and have them delivered, and we're basically working by the hour. But that's what I mean. So if you let me jump back to flooring, for example. Home Depot will charge you like $2 a square foot to install. That's how they bring you in, right? Get you to come in. I typically am closer to $4 an hour. So when
Yep.
people think about that, they think, "Wow, this guy's nuts. I'm not going to use him." But then, so if we're doing it in time and materials, and I
Right.
know we can lay 300 or 400 feet in an afternoon, um, that's what, like $1,600 in labor, but that's pretty much the whole project. So that's why I don't like to do it that way, because if I take a project on and it takes me longer, but I've already given them my price, then I'm the one that's going to have to do it for the same price. Not, oh, this guy's dragging his feet just so he can get some more money out of me by the hour. So that's always been,
Weighing it. Yep.
I don't know, when I very first started out back in, well, it was
Yeah.
around 1990, between 90 and 95. I did have a client like that, and I worked hard all day long. I had by myself installed around 300 feet, and she paid me for the day. And then
Hmm.
she kind of flipped out, like once she realized how much money she was giving me for the day. But then I had to remind her that
Wow.
we were paying by the foot, and that the foot price was pretty comparable to all the other guys that were out there.
Shane, what's your opinion of this? I know because you and I have had a discussion about, time and materials versus not.
I'm done with time and materials forever, and I shared my frustrations with Frank. Now that we reactivated the license and have had crews working on projects aside from our listings, um, it was almost like being a rookie again. I went through a lot of losing money before we started being profitable. One is I never want to charge enough, which Frank knows I've always been guilty of that. But secondly is the fact that clients, if they start having you kind of follow their lead on time and material on things they want done, if there isn't really a laid out game plan with tasks to accomplish, they're not going to see progress. And so when they get these bills for time and material, they're like, but what did you do? And it's like, that's just that's horrible. Never again. I mean, I lost about $6,000 the last time we did that. And yeah, it's better for a client to know, like, look, we can accomplish this project. This is what it's going to cost, and then they just know. And then whether you finish in a day or 3 days, that's what it is. But at the end of the day, it's like, sure, they can go get the cheap guy. And even growing up with my dad, when my dad was running his company, my dad always used to say, it's better to do it right the first time, and it costs you less. And it's true. Like, my dad would stick to his guns on his bids, and sometimes the clients would make the mistake and come back, like what Frank was saying earlier on the paint. They might get lucky with somebody that it might work out. Most of the time, it doesn't. The other thing now that people are learning is licensed contractors versus unlicensed. I mean, one of the jobs we're on right now, they wanted to make sure everybody I brought in was licensed and insured because one of their colleagues just got sued because somebody fell off a ladder. So one of her colleagues was having his house remodeled, and now there's a major lawsuit because the guy fell off a ladder and broke his leg or something. And so it's like, I think that clients are so concerned about what they're going to pay for the job that they're not taking into account, all these additional things. Like, what if something bad happens? Or what if they run off with the money? Or what if they don't finish the job? What if they take the material? You have no recourse. When you have someone who's licensed and insured, you have protection, you have recourse. The other thing too is when when they compare pricing. I mean, I'll tell you right now, workers' comp, it's 27%. Like, if you got people on payroll, you got to understand that we're already handicapped almost 30% right out the gates on hourly wage. And we pay our people good. That's why our people work hard and do a good job. So, I mean, I don't want to carry this subject on too far, but no, I totally agree with Frank. And these are very, very important things that, consumers need to know, and they need to think about all of it. They just, so many people are so used to getting laser focused on cost that they don't think about all these other things. And, Frank, we've learned the hard way.
Yeah, it was, you bring some thoughts to mind. Back when I first started out, I worked without a license for probably 10 years. And everything was great, but I did get some flack from other contractors, and I didn't understand it at first, until I really started thinking about it, that they do have much more overhead than I did. If they have an office or a building that they pay, rent for to keep their trucks and tools and things like that, that costs a lot. And back then, not as much as it does today, with real estate and retail space and that kind of stuff being sky high. But yeah, I then I started to understand why they were a little bit upset with us coming in and working for half of what they had to charge on a project. So now I'm the one that gets to get upset about guys who are not licensed.
Full circle, Frank. Full circle.
Well, and I just love this exchange because I mean, to what we were talking about earlier, it does give people just more in-depth insight into like what it means to run a business, what it means to run a general contracting business, and what you guys have to think about and like work through. Like Shane, your comment about like workers' comp, I bet you 95% of people like would be surprised by that because they just don't think about it.
Well, and being that high, and that's just one of the insurances we have.
Yeah.
We pay other insurances as well. So, yeah, and that became fresh to me again, obviously, when we reactivated a license a couple of years ago, and actually started, being in that field. I mean, I've always respected it, and I know that it's there. I just didn't realize how expensive it had gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made a lot more sense for some of the expensive bids I was getting. Although with Frank, I'm one of the guys that told him to raise his prices in the past. So definitely, he knows I'm a fan because I definitely have never knocked his prices.
Well, and I think there's also a theme here that Shane, you and I have talked about that relates to realtors as well, right? Like when we deal with clients on the listing or the buying side, a lot of times like it's the same thing, right? They want us to cut on commission because they because they go to the other platforms that are charging, like 1.5% for listing. But it ultimately does come back down to like you kind of get what you pay for, right? You start seeing listings with like photos that when we look at it, you like 100% taken with an iPhone and not even taken well with an iPhone, right? Versus the level of service, the building of that relationship, the full service that other agents can offer, and it makes a difference for some people. For some clients, maybe it doesn't matter, and they have a great experience and they go forward. Well, like that's totally great for them, and we wish them the best. And others, sometimes, and Shane, you have stories like this where you'll lose a client because they wanted a cheaper rate only for them to come back to you because they the agent that they ultimately went with didn't do a good job for them to begin with. And then you talk about, okay, how much cost, time, lost opportunity, right, did you have for just wanting to save a little bit?
Well, in our business too, it's one of the similarities, is the hidden things that the consumer's not thinking about. They're so focused on saving commission. In that case, it versus the insurance, like in construction and all that, are they licensed and insured? In our business, it's like, hey, you're so focused on the 1% of, like, let's say 600,000, which is only $6,000 for God's sakes,
Yeah.
that you're forgetting about the fact that I could probably help you make an extra $50,000 selling your home. It's like
Yeah.
they don't think about the investment part of that. That's what's different in our business. But it's, there's obviously some, related stuff to construction. And I've learned over the years, just those just aren't your people. You just got to keep going.
Yep.
You got to find the people that actually value you, and there's enough people that do value you. And I mean, as long as you value yourself first, then you know what your worth is. Then it should be easy to plug in to, people that can relate. And when you do find your clients, and Frank, you can speak to this, you naturally become friends because you naturally align. Like, it's so weird. You align with your clients in so many ways. If you start, you're not supposed to talk about certain things with clients, right? But I mean, a lot of times you'll find that you're like political, spiritual, like lifestyle, familial, like it's weird how everything will align, right? So it's like, it's kind of like the same value. It's like you start working with people that have the same values that you do, and those are your people, and there's someone out there for everybody. So, and you got to be okay with walking away. It took me a long time to be okay with walking away, or to not worry about what these people thought. Like, you know how it is, Frank. Sometimes you feel bad. You put a lot of time into a bid, you didn't get the job, and then you're like, I really thought this would be a good connection or whatever, but hey, you probably just dodged a bullet, man.
Well, and I think that's key is like knowing your value, because we've talked with a lot of agents who are like, well, I don't even know like where to even begin to talk with my client who wants a discount. And I think part of it is if you know your value, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you communicate to your client will come out because you believe in yourself. If you don't know your value first, that's going to come out in your communication. And then of course you're not going to feel comfortable talking to your clients about why they shouldn't be looking for a discount from you and all the things that you bring to the table. And Shane, the last thing you did bring up is, yeah, at some point, be willing to walk away, because sometimes you never know. Like you believing in your value, knowing your value, being able to walk away may actually bring that client back to the table, because it's like, okay, hey, if my agent or my general contractor is willing to, they see themselves in the certain light, they see their value, they're willing to stand up to me. Imagine what they're going to do like when they have to deal with other agents. And I feel more confident in knowing that they're going to stick up for me because they can stick up for themselves.
That's true. Totally true. And now, Michael, I wanted to kind of, move from, because, Frank's like, hey, this construction thing's been great, but I'm kind of in my final
Yeah.
stages there.
Yeah.
Frank has actually turned a new chapter here. He never forgot about his desire to invest,
Yeah.
and he actually went and found his way on his own. He literally went out and found. So Frank, obviously earlier you mentioned how things went south back during the crash when you first started, but obviously you and your wife, who's been your partner in this, you guys have really gone out and educated yourselves and really learned the game on your own, which is impressive, because a lot of times people like, go pick on one of their realtor contacts or maybe their financial planner. Or, a lot of times people will kind of start with people in their circle that know that stuff. You guys just said, you know what, we're just going to venture out on our own and see what we come across. So talk to us about that journey, because I know that's
That's been a
been
really
something that's up and coming and become more prominent in your life.
well, it's inspirational. You know us from way back when, and I've never had myself. I've never really had like a 401k or any kind of retirement. I was just working, and we were for the majority of the time we were really, I would have to say, paycheck to paycheck kind of living, even though we don't live, high on the hog or anything like that. But it, when we tried that back in 2007, we lost those properties. The concept was right. People say, pick up some rentals. The tenants are going to pay the costs, and everything's going to work out just fine. But back then, I didn't think about, I was just thinking about the rent covering the mortgage, not property management, repairs that come up, and different things like that. And we hung on for a while, but when it started to go south, it was really like I've never lost so much sleep in my life. And I didn't want to go through bankruptcy. We were always brought up to pay our bills and work hard and all that stuff. But one of our attorneys at the time just said, don't. He told us not to feel too bad because big corporations do it every day. Just to reset their not their lifestyle, but their business, I guess. And if you think about your life as a business, then we were able to, excuse me, we were able to move through that. a little bit easier without so much guilt. And then that was in 2010, and it was still in the back of my mind for a while because obviously I hadn't come up with any retirement money. So I thought I was looking for a way to build that up. And when in my search, I started out looking at like retirement accounts and just dumping whatever I could into like a 401k or um, accounts like that. And then after a little while, I realized that wasn't going to do it fast enough. I was 58 already, and 57 or 58. And then through that search, I found things like Bigger Pockets and started listening to a bunch of that content. There was just one specific interview that really sparked it again for me. That was Brandon Turner and David Green. You guys might have heard of them before, but David Green was a police officer that had started buying rentals in the hopes that he could replace his income, in in his future. And so from there, we just started taking it all in, and we ran across some other people on the channel that introduced us to the turnkey model, and that sounded really interesting because California was a little bit too expensive for us to start out with. So we ended up looking at the turnkey model, and that was in 2019 when I started re-educating myself, and from then on, met a lot of good people that could teach us what we didn't know, or start to teach us what we didn't know. We're always going to be learning. We're never going to know it all, but just in these 3 or 4 years, we've learned so much, and we've been able to
Yeah.
purchase a few out-of-state rentals. And I think after we purchased our first one, even though we learned quite a bit, once you get the first one, there's so many more lessons to learn. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. But as long as you have enough reserves to help get you through those first couple of not really emergencies, I would say. Because when we bought our first one, things like heating units went out, that's $3,000 or $4,000, and a tenant moved out, so you have a $3,000 or $4,000, make ready on a unit, things like that. If you don't have any money set aside, that's gonna stop you in your tracks right there. But luckily, we had some reserves, and it helped us keep moving forward. Now, I think right now we're up to 5 properties, and we have 8 doors in 5 different states. So that's been kind of a, a thing we get ribbed on, being all over the country without just settling on one market and learning that first. But we've learned a lot, and now we're kind of pointed in the right direction on some areas that we really like, and have started building a team there with a property manager and real estate agents and things like that are helping us out.
So Frank, you kind of talked about the states that you're currently investing in now. You kind of talked a little bit about everything that you learned. Um, I'm going to take that a step further. If you could like encapsulate for us, like reflecting back on your journey through investing and building out your portfolio, like if they're just like one or two core principles that you feel like you want to leverage for your next like 5 properties, what would that be?
Well, I think right now we're going through the qualification process with a couple of new lenders because we were qualified with a lender here in I think they're in Arizona as Security National Mortgage, and we were pre-qualified with them, so we were looking for properties. But two of the markets that we like, well, the one that I really like is St. Louis, and the purchase prices there are 75 to 85K, and our lender didn't go that low. So we found some other lenders in those markets through an agent that we work with in St. Louis, and the other through the turnkey provider that I mentioned earlier. And they have they have lower loan limits. They go down to 50,000, which makes sense for the markets that we're in. So that's one thing. I mean, lending is different all across the board. Some companies have different products. They're not all the same, which is one thing that we learned. And one thing that's always kept me hopeful is that you think one program might be ending, so you think you're done and you can't invest anymore, and then next week they have a brand new something that's going to help you keep moving forward. So that's been great. And I think falling into the community that Shane mentioned that we're in is has been super helpful. It seems like most of the people in this group have just recently started, back around 2019, 2020, like we did. So everybody's kind of at the same place, but there are some people that don't have any units yet, and some that have, you know, 10 or 20 units in our group. And a couple of our mentors have, 100+ units. One's in Fresno and one's in Massachusetts. So um, that would be, I think, the biggest thing for us was just falling in there and just learning even the language, to be able to speak with, well, you guys or our lenders or our realtors, and let them know that we know what we're talking about. We've done some research, and I think that helps them take us more seriously when, you just call somebody in St. Louis and say, hey, I'm looking for, an investment property, and they might not take you too seriously at first, but once you get to speak with them and they know that you have at least a basic idea of what you're doing, then they're more apt to work with you. And the on that agent in St. Louis that we're working with, we found her on a couple of different platforms after we were introduced to her. She was also a pro agent on Bigger Pockets, and then another group that we're in, she's there's a group called Agents Invest, and there are a bunch of agents in the Midwest that try to find deals for investors. So with her being on those two platforms, it gave me a little bit more confidence in her.
That's a real good niche too, because obviously we're in the real estate industry, and in those markets where long term rentals do make a lot of sense. That's a great niche. Like the agents that get involved in that, they're obviously savvy because they're thinking about how can we build our business. But then just like once they get entrenched in that and they build a repetition, then they get really good at it and then they get connected. Kind of like me, like with the flips and stuff here, like all the different people I've connected with the relationships, like wholesalers and just people out there always looking for deals. It's like once you're in that game, it creates a lot more opportunities. And I've been obviously ramping up again, and it's amazing almost every day getting calls. And so those agents do become an asset, especially if they know what they're doing. That's great. And then those property managers, I love that you're, following the referrals. If one of those property managers is already taking care of 40 or 50 doors for one of your partners, they're going to do a damn good job for you because they don't want to blow those relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even though we only have one unit with that company, our friend has 80, so that brings a little bit more weight with us, and we'll get a little bit better attention from that agency. I was surprised to hear one of the mentors in our groups was saying, how many real estate agents don't own investment properties, and it's like 90+%. I would think with all of the resources that they have, and I mean, they see it, right? They go out and find investment properties for their clients, and they see the results, but they still don't take action for themselves. I think, you know, um, that's a big one. I think you don't need a real estate license to do it, but I think it gives them a little bit more of a jump start if they wanted to get into that. And some people are just nervous about being out of state. I get flack all the time from one of our mentors because I haven't seen any of our properties in person. You know, and he's like, you need to go check stuff out. At least make sure there is a house there.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing, Frank, prior to divorce. Like I was in a lot of states too, including Florida, like a lot of new construction and stuff. And I'm aggressive like that. Like I support like your ventures out of state, especially since you're getting to that point where you want some passive income for your retirement. You're at the right stage in your life where you don't want to take too much risk, and so breaking into these lower price points is actually really smart. Like I told well, I got your back. I'm always happy to hear about what you're doing out there. But I think that you're mitigating risk. And as far as what you're saying about agents not having rental properties, a lot of the agents in our network, they're in the Midwest and different places. They do have a lot of investment properties. It's more agents in our market. A lot of them don't even have a primary house because it's just such an expensive market, And so I think if you're selling the product, you better be drinking the Kool Aid yourself. And I'll tell you what, I'm a big proponent for real estate. I always have been. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't even mess with stocks. So I think that that should dictate who you work with too. Like, how much they believe in the product. Because unfortunately, just like in any other industry, there's salespeople that are focused on making the money and not being passionate about the product. And so that's interesting. You pointed that out.
Yeah, I think well these days with technology, it's a lot easier to do these things out of state. One of the big pluses, again in St. Louis, I'm like in St. Louis, that agent there has properties of her own. She's been doing it for a long time. And when I reached out to, like, she referred a lender, she referred a property management company, and different things like that. Whenever I talk to those people, they're always telling me, how great she is, and they know of her because of her reputation and things like that. So I think if anybody's looking to go out of state, they need to find someone there that's doing it already. Get an agent that has properties and understands your goals, and that type of thing is super helpful. It can be scary to just say I want to go invest in Cleveland because everybody says it's a good market to invest in. But there's streets, street by street, good neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods, things like that, they always, one of my first steps is always to find a property manager if I'm looking at a property and ask them, would they manage it for me? What do they think of the area? And I've had some tell me, no, I won't go there. So you better not buy there. So that's been a great resource.
That's really great insight, Frank. And I think that's something that's, I mean, for me personally, it's also been helpful because I'm looking to now like also invest out of state and find some property. So I think that's going to be, so I appreciate you sharing that. And as we kind of wrap up this podcast, I'm just curious, like Frank Contreras, like you, the person, like what are you looking forward to the most this year, and kind of what's your vision for yourself as you continue this journey?
I think right now what we're going through, like I mentioned, was getting qualified with the other couple of lenders because our agent in that market in St. Louis had brought us properties to look at a few weeks ago. And at the time, I didn't realize that our current lender didn't go down that low. So I want to get through this process with the new lenders and then keep looking. We're hoping to pick up two more properties this year, probably single families. And then after that, we will probably be looking at small multifamily, 2 to 4 units, so we can stay with the residential lending products. And then Cynthia, my wife, she's a teacher, so she's hoping that next year teaching will be her last. So we're hoping that the cash flow that we've started growing will help us so that she can retire and do something else that she really likes to do. She loves teaching, but she's been doing it a long time.
I
You'll be
love
able
that.
to retire. That's exciting and fast too. I mean, you guys just started. You said about 4 years ago with this part.
Yeah, we bought our first property on our second go round was purchased in 2021. That was the triplex. So yeah, and it's taken a little bit of time. We've had to, so we got the 5 properties within those 2 years, and realized that we needed to settle down for a minute and stabilize those, make sure the cash was going to be coming in regularly and things like that. And there were a lot of things that came up that needed to be fixed, but and that's part of the learning process. So now that those things are getting ironed out, we'll be able to actually um, see how much cash they bring in each month, and then help us make better decisions moving forward.
So I have one more question. Actually, this is something that Michael originally brought up a while back, but this is actually a good question for you, Frank, because I've never even asked you this. But what would you say are the three principles that you live and breathe every day that have helped you get to where you are today? Because I mean, I know you really well, but I've actually never thought to ask you this. So thank you, Michael. That's actually some great insight.
Well, as far as things that we try to do every day to keep moving forward, I think one, we've never really been, I guess we've never really tried to live too far outside of our means, and that has helped us. Um, Again, just a crazy thing when we first started trying to invest, and we really only had our mortgage. We didn't have any credit card debt or anything outside of our mortgage. but since we didn't really earn that much on paper, our DTI was a little bit too high. And so I think we're lucky that we didn't have a lot of credit card debt. I think it would have held us back even further. But also just trying to help other people has helped us a lot. The more, like you mentioned, I started a YouTube channel to document our journey since we're still in the beginning stages. And that seems to be where people need the most help. So we're just trying to help other people if they're interested to get going and pick up their first property. We've done a few mentorships that have helped us a lot, and really, I think that's about it. Just try not to overspend, try to save what you can. And I've learned that having money sitting in the bank isn't really doing you much good. You need to get it invested in something that can bring you a little bit better return. And because even if it's in a high yield savings account, it's still not keeping up with inflation. You're still losing, 5 or 6% on your money. So I would I would definitely put it in something else.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And so, Frank, we always like to ask our guests this one question. You're kind of adjacent to the real estate industry, but one question we'd always like to ask is if you were to put your real estate realtor hat on, knowing everything that you've learned today, whether that's building out your general contracting business, getting into investments, if you were building your own real estate business from the ground up today, what would you focus on and how would you go about doing it?
I think it's similar to the real estate investing side. I think I would try to follow someone who's doing it successfully in the whatever market I wanted to start up in. And it's the same thing where if you're thinking about investing out of state, find someone who's already done it, right? They would say you don't try to reinvent the wheel. But I know people like Shane, of course, and his network, and there are a lot of great agents in our area. I think that would be the first thing I would do, would try to find someone like that to learn
That's
from.
actually that's interesting because you're not even in real estate, and that's like spot on. That's like probably the best advice. And then I think the other thing that you've already done in your construction business is relationships. Taking care of the clients, building the relationships. Like that's because I mean, Michael, just from me knowing Frank all these years, he's like me. We're relational, not transactional. Like when we work with people, like we're looking to build long term relationships, and I that's something that I probably why him and I've worked together for so long and always have aligned. Um, because recently I've thinned the herd of my circle, and I was telling Frank how much I appreciate him being in my circle. There's only a handful of people at the end of the day that are truly in your circle. So thanks for that, Frank. 20 years of good friendship, and he's always got great advice. I like what you have to say. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming on, Frank, and making time. I know you've gotten a little busier lately, so we appreciate you and your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being on with you guys. It's been a great time, and that's just what you were talking about, Shane. Was we hear a lot in these groups that we're in that you need to monitor your network, and if there's people that are holding you back, like you said, you need to thin it out a little bit. Not that you have to stop associating with people like that, but lean on the people that are doing what you want to do and going where you want to go a little bit more, and that'll help you get there. And then maybe you can bring some of those other people up with you if they're willing.
Yeah. Aside from that, there's just got to be a strong cutoff game. Because I mean, you know me, Frank, personally. Like, yeah, I wanted the problem is bringing everybody along, and Michael knows this from the real estate side. Is trying to bring everybody along. You can't, but that's you and I's personality. That's what we want to do. I'm trying to get better about not trying to get. But like you said, one thing you said so true is that you don't have to go tell them, "Hey, I'm not going to associate with you anymore." You just don't reach out and just be cordial. Like don't burn bridges, but they reach out, you say hi. I mean, but yeah, your network's really important, especially where you're going. So I totally agree with that. Great advice. A lot of good nuggets today, Frank.
Actually, sorry, one last question, Frank. You mentioned a YouTube channel. and an Instagram. So if folks wanted to connect with you, like what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you. The YouTube channel is just Old Guy REI, and
I love
that's
it.
me.
Creative.
Yeah, we're just we just started talking about all the purchases that we made and all the lessons that we've made so far, or the lessons that we've learned so far. Hopefully, people can learn from that, and it'll shorten their journey a little bit, help them get there a little bit faster. But also, we have a great network of mentors. They're not necessarily paid mentors, but they do have mentorships you can buy. But they're on YouTube all the time. And if you go to my channel, we talk about them all the time, so you can find them as well. And and then on Instagram, we're trying to post some of the current projects that we're working on, things like that in the remodeling side of our business. So we're getting a little bit better at that. Once we figure out how to do it and get them posted, we'll put them up there.
I just subscribed, Frank. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I gotta definitely. Wow, you got 75 subscribers already. Holy moly, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're burning a trail for sure.
Yeah, I had seen some of what you sent me, but I'll have to get in and watch these episodes. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
All right, Frank. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on with us. And thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Take care.